Ooh. Um. Ah. Huh. Twitter has changed. Now, a premium account on Twitter is required to create live broadcasts on their platform. Fair enough. So I guess I'm not. I'm going to remove that and not stream on Twitter from now on. Anyway, 3 people are already watching. Wow. Hello, people on YouTube. Board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, we're not gonna shout. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. I am Bez Bonnie-Beth Shahriari, and beside me is the designer of Ovation, the designer of Questabell, and the designer of many more to come, and a lovely person all round, Kirsten Lunde.
Hi, Bez Bonnie-Beth. Thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I am well. It's been a busy day, but that's a good thing.
So it's just let's talk about time zones in as much detail as you want to share. Where are you roughly, and what time is it here? I am in London, UK. I'm looking at I'm going to say very slightly bluish white. It's basically just white, but there's you can sort of imagine that there's some blue behind all these clouds, possibly. And yeah, it's currently 10:32 in London. What time is it over there? Where are you? And what's the weather like?
I am in New Plymouth, New Zealand. It is a cold winter's night here at 9:33 p.m. And I can't see anything outside because it's dark.
And hello, Elaine. Thank you so much for joining us. It is lovely to see you virtually, or rather your dog, I guess, or to see your messages, I will say. Who says it's very cloudy and muggy here in Nottingham too. Yeah, I think that the UK I think it's been quite muggy. It's still warm. I'm enjoying the heat. I will say that. For a while, I've had to be wearing jumpers and stuff, but finally, I'm down to one layer. This is amazing for me. And yesterday, I went dancing. I'm going to share this, and I was just sweating and drinking so much water as I was getting back into swing dancing. So much fun with Swing Patrol. They are very queer friendly and it's very much a safe space. But just to kind of make it even more comfortable, a friend came with me, and that was such a lovely thing. Let's talk about that. What are your recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights? Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. What have you been up to? And then we'll get stuck into Questabell and stuff.
I think other than Questabell, the biggest thing I've been up to is Ovation Logistics and promoting it being at Gen Con this weekend with my wonderful, wonderful partner, Grand Gamers Guild, at Gen Con. So I'm not there, but Ovation is. And this weekend I'm traveling to Auckland to ship out the New Zealand games, and the other games will be following suit soon as well from other regions. So that's part of my really busy and wonderful goings on lately is getting that's Ovation awesome. To all of my wonderful backers.
And I think it's quite similar to Spiel, where it's Tuesday, and I mean Spiel also has the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for setup, and people are there, but it's not technically open yet. And I think Gen Con is also a 4-day show: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Is that right?
I think that's correct, yes.
I mean, I wish you all the best, and people can see Ovation back in the background. But let's move on to what I said is the game of the year for the ELL deck, and Questabell. So for those who don't know, how would you define Questabell?
Questabell, I would define it as a cooperative word-building game. And with a sort of mission-based quest system. So it's got 50 different quests at different difficulty levels, and with a narrative story to go along with it. Yeah, I think that covers it.
I just wanted to get out the cards, and talk a little bit about the ELL deck to take a step back to say, and what this
Yeah.
whole BezDay thing is, because obviously not everyone knows, but I launched my first Kickstarter for In a Bind on 1st of August 2014, and then when it came time to that I'd actually made it, I gave it to backers in UK Games Expo, and I wanted a release date that people could remember. And I felt, okay, the 1st of the month, that's kind of memorable. Let's release it on 1st of August. Then the following year, it was In a Bind Junior, and I was like, okay, I've been a little bit late. I've gotten it to people, to backers at UK Games Expo. Let's have a similar date. August 1st, 2016, it makes sense. And then a tradition was born. And in 2017, I launched the ELL deck. And August the 1st was not only the official launch of the ELL deck, but also technically the digital launch of Couple, which you could download from there. And in every year thereafter, there's been a new game for it. I think we had Mickle and Muckle, that was also by me, Categorical by Tom Cauldron, Unfinishable by Paul Mansfield. Oh my gosh, I might need to read the thing. Dwindle by Joe Kelly. I feel really biddable by Xate and Alex Cannon, and that's 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And Puzzle, which was also by me. And then 2024 is Questabell, and this is the most ambitious thing. And thank you, Elaine. And for those who are sometimes confused, it's nothing to do with my birthday. It's nothing to do with anything personal. It's purely just an egocentric, hey, I make games and I want to kind of celebrate that. I want to connect with people. And as the years have gone on, I've offered to do art requests and stuff. I've tried to do real life launch parties. Back in 2015, I sat in the shop all day. And after in 2020, that kind of went by the wayside for obvious reasons. But then I started streaming, which was quite nice. And so if anyone wants me to do any art requests, just type it up and I will do something whilst thinking of you. And I don't think you can ask fairer than that. And the only limits I have is I'm not going to start drawing crowd scenes, and I'm not going to draw anything that's against my values. So if you, but like, be sensible, and I will enjoy drawing whatever you want. So back to Questabell, like, it does take a while for games to go through that design process and everything. And shall we look at the original design, or is this going to be embarrassing for you?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, no, the original design. Sorry, I'm trying to look and see if I have my award that you sent me, but I don't see it. I must have that tucked away somewhere.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oh yeah, they're so fun, aren't they? They're the radish and beetroot. All Bez's designs are so fun though. Yeah, no. Well, I had the idea, and I knew it would take a long time to put something concrete together because it was so ambitious. But you encouraged me to send sort of an outline that was very raw at first. So I know the state it was in. You know the state it was in. It was not a done deal when I first sent it in. But then you got back to me, as you do with all of your submitters.
Okay,
and,
I'm going to take a step back and talk about the ELL deck design for the annual contest, because it did fall by the wayside last year, basically, and I deliberately didn't advertise it, and I'm kind of glad I didn't get any entries this year, so I can sort of make up for everyone from last year now. The truth is that emigrating and preparing to go to Bangkok, I think, stressed me out a lot more than I expected. And I've had a lot of recent goings on. I'm not going to get too much into it, but with family and just the stress of everything thing and finances, but things will hopefully be in a better place soon, and I do really plan to make it up and send everybody who entered a good amount of feedback as I originally promised. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do for next year's LDEC game. It'll probably be one of my own designs. And thank you very much. I assume that those love hearts are out of compassion and support. So thank you very much. And yeah, I just want to tell everyone that the LDEC contests have not gone away. I've just had to take a wee break for personal mental health and general lack of energy and everything. I hope that makes sense. If anyone's got any questions about that in the comments, please ask. Otherwise, do you think I need to say anything more about that, Kirsten?
I don't think so.
Okay. So Questabell, I'm actually trying to remember where it came up. So I wish that these were dated by year. I've got 82 entries submitted over the years in this Google form, which is amazing. And obviously there aren't 82 designers. Some people have submitted multiple things, but I'm just scrolling through trying to find out which one is Kirsten. So let's talk about that original design. You had this idea and you were saying, I don't know whether I even want to do it. And I can't remember what I said, but I said
I wanted to do it, just not. I didn't think I wanted to submit it that year because it wasn't ready, and it wouldn't be a fully formed submission at the time. And you said, "Oh, I'm not worried about that. send me your ideas."
I think the key thing is that it's not about. Okay, let's see if you've got any. Are you happy with people knowing your email address? I guess you are.
Which one is it? The Lund Loves Games?
Yes, lundlovesgames@gmail.com.
Yeah, I'm fine with that one. Yeah, I'm fine with that one.
And I'm seeing,
me as a designer.
And then the other links are public links, and I will not show the private bits at the bottom, but yes. Let me I think you put it into a little, here we go, the PDF document. Okay. Share. Why is it not sharing? There we go, share, click, finally, it worked. So, the LDEC Games submission, this was, out of all the submissions, this was 69th, which is, so
my teenager would say, nice. That's what Riley would say about that.
And at the time, the game had not been tested at all. And I think the key thing here is that with the design contest, I'm looking for the initial design. I'm not looking, I want it to be something that can be played using those rules. So if you need me to, if you say, oh, draw 7 cards, I'm not quite sure about this, but it's probably between 5 and 10, but 7 feels like a good starting point. That's fine. I will start with 7. But I'm not going to, I don't want to have to interpret your rules. I fundamentally, as long as it's playable, as long as I can try it, as long as I can get a sense of what's going on, that was the key thing. Because it's, the possibility was always there for me to take it away and develop it, as happened quite a bit with Categorical, Dwindle. Unfinishable didn't change that much, but with Questabell, it changed massively, but we were both continuing to work on it. And I think you came up with, I mean, I hate the fact that design can't be broken down. I'm going to say you did the initial, like, vision design, let's say, and then we both did the design. That's how I'm going to frame it. Is that reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
And so no other materials required, which is always good. A cooperative game with players attempting to complete words, 1 letter at a time to complete missions. And originally you said 3 to 4, which was really interesting in retrospect. We've realized it's actually 1 to 4. What made you think at the time that it was 3 to 4 players?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I know at the time I was less comfortable with solo design, and so I kind of steered clear of that, lest I do something that was solo for the sake of marketing, but not a good experience, you know? So that's why I avoided one solo as an option. I'm not sure why I avoided two, but but that was easily dismissed when we realized that it scaled as
Yeah.
that was pretty early on that we scaled it right to 1 to 4.
And in the PDF, you basically explain, okay, this is what's going on. Here's a suited three-letter word. So you already had something which was everything needs to be, and you had a lot of extra restrictions. So, and you did have
just ideas of things that could be done with the variety that's in the deck already in your wonderful design, and the play space in terms of the design space in terms of what we could do. And then I was testing different levels to see what would work.
And what was originally submitted wasn't like as much a progression as it was like, hey, here's some ideas for stuff. 5 words, 3 letters each. And then, let me remember the cards, the number of cards dealt. Okay. And then there's a lot of extra stuff to remember with, okay, what's the extra words? The moves are... how many moves are allowed? Oh my gosh, I totally forgot this. Can you
remind us? We had moves, yeah.
What's moves even about? This doesn't exist
moving
anymore.
A card. Yeah, no, moving a card.
I mean, like, I think we found that just putting something in the same, like, just the fundamental rules of putting down something and having multiple rows worked. I think originally it was literally just 1 row, which, is that right?
I think it was, there wasn't that limit. It was the limits were different. It was definitely, I don't think we had row limits. It was definitely card limits or letter limits, right? So that you couldn't go longer than it wasn't. Now all of our quests are minimum of a certain number of letters. But yeah, we found it more effective to restrict the number of rows to 2 and then not allow moving, so that there's more tension in terms of, well, you've got to work with it as you build it out. But yeah, it was just, at that point, it was just a bunch of ideas that you said, just, give me the thoughts. And so I was trying to put them all together. And
see, here's the thing, like, I played all the things with a bunch of folk, and like your own game of, you also submitted something else that we ended up turning really quickly into a game about writing words, aiming to match other folk exactly 3 times.
Yep.
But it was very much just a bunch of ideas at the start. And Elaine, I'm really glad that this is resonating with you. Thank you so much. I'm going to say, can we take a small tangent about validation? And are we allowed to do that, or is this terrible timing for a tangent?
Oh, you can't dictate timing for tangents, can't you? Tangents are a whenever sort of deal.
Okay, I would like to talk about validation, basically. Firstly, Elaine, thank you for saying that. I feel validated by that. And I feel very pleased to know that this is resonating with you. This is of interest to you. This is, I don't know, giving you more information or entertaining. And I also, like, I wanted to talk slightly about validation with making games, because ultimately I want to make games that people care about. I want to make games, it doesn't have to be like 1 million people play the thing, or even 100,000 people play the thing necessarily, but I want to know that people are playing it. I want to know that some people are connecting with it. And both Kirsten and I have in the instructions. Yeah, I think it's just in the instructions. We've given our email. You can email us both. Hopefully both of us. Don't just email one, then the other will be sad. But I assume either of us would pass it forward. Yeah, we would pass it on to the other. But like, let us know what you're thinking. If you give it a go, say, oh, I finally give it. Just hearing that someone's picked it up it makes us feel like, I'm not, sorry, I don't want to say it makes us feel like, it makes me feel like, I only can speak for myself, it makes me feel like it was worth doing. It makes me feel like, oh, look, there is joy in creation. There's joy in experimentation, in seeing what's possible within a framework. There's joy in tweaking rules and seeing what works better compared to this side or that side. But I also think that the main joy, for me at least, is when I see other people playing my thing. That's why I still do my 2 p.m. events. Not because I think it's the best marketing exercise ever, although it's probably not bad having like a crowd of people when 2 p.m. is kind of like a little bit of a lull. And then to have people coming over, that's nice for people to get curious, but mainly it's for my own emotional satisfaction. It's because like on a day when like, I think like one day we had 6, I can't remember, it was more than 12 for sure, like at UK Games Expo this year, one of the days, and then just quickly grabbing creatures that were totally different and counting their beetroots or radishes, and just seeing people engage with that thing, knowing that they had fun, seeing the laughter on their faces, that's what makes it worthwhile for me. And yeah, seeing people try out Questabell is something that will spark joy when I next bring it to a thing. And when I was playing it with my friend Fi, there was some joy in myself because I think it's an interesting game with lots of different quests going on, but there was also joy in me that my friend, who isn't in the business of just playing games for the sake of making me happy, I mean, she cares about my happiness, sure, but if it wasn't the best game, she would tell me, I think. But she was like, cool, let's keep playing. And then we got to like quest 18 and then only paused because dinner, and then we had 2 other games that we did want to play before she had to go. And it's that validation. And the truth is that so much stuff you never hear about it. And I think that's one really nice thing about Kickstarter. You do really feel connected to your people who are hopefully engaging with the game. And to a sense, it's not about the money. Yes, it's about the money. I want to be able to support myself. I want to be able to print this stuff without paying from my own pocket. But I will say I get more. I mean, sure, the numbers are nice, and I've sold more than 300,000 copies of Yogi and Yogi Guru, which is amazing. And it makes me feel like, I mean, 1/3 it means that like clearly people enjoy it because they keep buying it. But there's a part of my mind that's like, are these people actually playing it? Do they just buy it because it looks fun and then just puts it to the side? And actually seeing someone in the convention, there's no doubting that when someone plays the thing and then they go up and want to buy the thing without coercion, to me, that is the purest example of seeing them laugh, seeing them have fun, seeing them get intrigued, seeing them say, I want to keep playing this more and more and share it with my friends, and then they go off and buy a copy. And I think that's why selling stuff at conventions, for me, it's not just about finances, it's about emotional validation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're apart from that, when you're like in this stage of the Kickstarter with Ovation that I'm in, or where we are right now with Questabell, where we're just getting it to the world, it feels like such a long time before you get to see that. that response. So I feel like with both of those games right now, I'm just on the edge of my seat going, please, somebody get back to me and tell me that you're enjoying it so that I know that it was out there for good reason.
Like waiting for that first comment, waiting for that first rating. I mean, people talk about, there was one game on the Big Talk face group that someone said, oh, there's all these ratings and the game's not even out yet. That doesn't seem right. And someone's saying, oh, it's less than 60 ratings. That doesn't matter. But there's so many indie games, most of mine included, that don't have 30 ratings. And I say 30 specifically because that's the number to get it ranked on Board Game Geek. I believe it is. And they might have changed it. They might change it tomorrow. I don't know. Like, they could change anything. It's a website. I mean,
yeah. It's their website. They make it the rules.
You have to ignore some ratings sometime. I think there's one rating for In a Bind. I almost know it verbatim because it's caused me so much introspection. It said something like, I hate games that make you be silly for the sake of being silly, and this game is the worst of that trash. And
oh heavens.
So someone wrote this, and I was talking to my friends Alan and Charlie Paul, and then they said, that's a really good review. Yes, they might have given it I can't remember what it was. It was a very low score. And then they said, look, this person hates inherently what this game is, and if it's the worst of that trash, according to them, that means it epitomizes that thing the best. And so if someone loves that thing, they're going to love it the most. And it wasn't until years after that, I really understood what people mean when they talk about it's better to be loved and hated rather than just be liked by everyone. Do you know what I mean?
And I think you shared you've shared more than once. I've seen you share Mark Rosewater from Magic the Gathering talking about that at a convention.
I've learned so much from Mark Rosewater, and that's one of their 20 years, 20 lessons. It is such a big deal to remember that if you try to make anything of value, you are going to offend people. Whether it's just the way you are, the way you express yourself, unless you want to be the most beige vanilla ice cream, well-made vanilla ice cream. It's actually very good. But okay. Yeah. And I don't want to badmouth vanilla, but unless you want to, and I don't even want to badmouth beige either, because it has a purpose. But you know what I mean? Unless you want to become the most boring, unobjectionable person ever, you are going to offend people based on the way you dress, based on the way you present yourself, based on your weight, based on everything around you. And it's really hard. I think that the validation, whether it's about board gaming or whether it's about you as an individual, I think it's really hard to remember and to get over the fact that some people are going to hate you, some people are going to hate your stuff no matter what. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and Rogue Sates, it's lovely to see you. We had a quick mention.
Oh, I bet it in.
But yeah, do you have anything to say about the topic of validation before we go back to Questabell?
I think one of the things that's validating when you're talking about the reviews that are on Board Game Geek before a game comes out, oftentimes there are people who have play tested it or played it at a convention before it's been released, and those can be really validating and encouraging. And even today, when you shared or for me today, yesterday for you, I think, when you shared the link, and a designer I admire so much, Emily from Zorua Games, shared I'm still going to call it a tweet. Sorry. When she reposted the tweet, and she said, "This is a really fun game. Everybody check it out." And that was extremely kind and validating, and I admire her so much. So yeah, those are really important parts of the process, so that when the hard parts come, when you're getting the critiques that you need to hear to make the changes in your game that you need to make, it's good to have those other moments that you hold on to for validation, and to remember that it's not you.
Mm-hmm.
The game isn't trash. It's just there's still so all
and
that is so important.
There's definitely parts of anything of value is going to offend some people, and it's not about those people are wrong or anything. Like Sate is alluding to the fact that she doesn't like most of my games, and that's totally fair, because she's not in the market she's not generally in the market for a physical game or a party game or the kind of games that I have made in the past. And actually, I think that I'd be curious if you look at my Bez Facebook. I had some ideas for things that I was curious if anyone would. I'm not going to get too much into that right now. I feel like that should be a separate discussion, because then we are tangents within tangents. So I'm not going to do that. But I am also going to say that this comment here, it reminds me that the people are not their creations. Yes, you put some of yourself into your creations. Yes, it stings when people call it trash or whatever, but you are not that. You are not any one thing you do. You are not your game. You are not your playtesting. You are not your music or your financial wealth or your physical health or anything. You are the sum of, yes, some of that is you, but you are so much more. And Xate wants to say, for the record, I do see the value in the games you make, but as you said, they aren't for me. And I appreciate all that. And in brief report, it's Thai weather in Germany. I don't know what you mean by Thai weather, but it's about 28, 29 degrees here, possibly a little bit more. According to the thermometer, it's 31 degrees right now in this room because we're on the top floor, and it's quite well insulated just above us. So 31, that is Thai weather, but not quite. 31 here and rising as well, says Xate. And Elaine asks, do you find it validating when someone enjoyed watching your games being played, even if they don't play the game themselves? That's really interesting. I don't have an immediate answer to that, but I think I'm going to say yes, because it did still spark some sort of joy. And even if there's a discussion around a game, or even if there's someone takes a game and says, you know what, I just wanted to buy the ELL deck to make my own games. Or if someone buys some of my creatures, whether it's the cute comical creatures or whatever, and says, oh, I just wanted to buy this for inspiration in my role-playing campaigns, even if they use it for in a totally different way than I intended, I've still been able to spark joy. How do you feel about this, Kirsten?
I certainly would. I think I would certainly feel validated by that. I know that, I haven't had a lot of that experience with watching other people watch my games being played, but I've watched people play my own in playtesting, and both with Ovation and with Questabell, there have been times that I've been distracted from note-taking by sheer joy myself in watching people respond to the game. So if someone else were in my shoes and just watching, like Innovation, when Shem Phillips and Sam McDonald and all these game artisans of New Zealand were giving each other this lovely applause for every performance that they did, and really got
just getting into the role of making these compositions.
It was so much fun. And then I've been very naughty in the playtesting group Grubs when I don't play along with them and I'm watching, because I just am so delighted to hear them react and talk with each other, and it just that they're so engaged and really wonderful people. And so seeing them have joy in it, or even struggle, even sometimes when they're struggling and I know they can do it, but they don't know they can do it because I can see everybody's cards, but they don't see them. It's just, I don't know. It for me as a third party, it brings joy. So I would certainly be validated if someone else as a third party got joy from it too.
'Cause, I mean, watching people do stuff has become such a bigger thing recently, like playthroughs on YouTube, on Twitch, on all this stuff. And sometimes it's just enjoying something vicariously. Sometimes it's because you don't have the brain power for that right now. Sometimes it's because you want to be in the chat of a Twitch channel. And this is going to be my... I'm wanting to get back to Questabell, but say it's, yeah, in a bond. So basically that was an asymmetric game. Some people are just getting stuff to do more and more contortion, and some people are betting on other people, like basically are buying stocks and shares in the people who are playing in a bind or yogi, if that makes sense. And I did, yeah, do that once at Terracon as well. That was really good. But yeah, that I think that came out of, that was a long-term thing, but then Satan and I kind of put it together. So yeah, we were talking about validation, and thank you for being here and validating us both, Sate and Elaine, because it is about that connection. And I think the key word for my year for 2024 for me is going to be connection, because I found are you validating us for validating you? Yes, I am. It was excellent validation.
Validaception.
Oh my gosh. Like, I want to get back into what was the big differences that we did, but I just want to say, like, through the past 2 years, we have changed this massively. This used to be just, hey, try to do this and then choose your difficulty. Try to do 4 4-letter words, choose your difficulty. Try to do 2 5-letter words and 2 6-letter words. Then try doing these weird tasks. And sometimes you're trying to do values based on the points on the cards. Sometimes you're trying to do things based on the patterns. And not all of these levels were even included. Like here, you can see, I think this was unintentionally left blank. It was due to time, if I'm...
No, it was just that I hadn't been able to test everything.
Yeah, like it was... I don't mean unintentionally, like you didn't, like, it was a typo. I just meant that it was a time constraint rather than...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, between the time we talked about it and the deadline was not much time at all. It was a matter of days. And I'd had the idea to do a cooperative word building game that was inspired by the missions in the crew, but I hadn't sorted a deck yet. I actually had taken my Quiddler deck and had put together something that I'd set it aside and I was going to work with it at some point, but then it just sat for a really, really long time. And then when I did the contest with the one that became a game about writing
words, aiming
to match other folk exactly
3 times.
Three times. And just getting to know the deck for that more, I was like, oh, this could be a brilliant combination with that idea. But like I said, when we talked about it, and I didn't think there was time because it was so ambitious. And you said, just put it down. So this was the first submission. But then after this first submission, and you talked to me, I wrote up something more in the spirit of what we've ended up with than this.
So this what was happened kind of is I saw this, and I think I said, this is brilliant. This is making it to the shorts list. I'm going to give you until the end of August to redo whatever you can. And there are some really great ideas, like, okay, how about extra cards that have not been formed into words? What if that's a limit? What if you're allowed to move something? What if you need to make all the same suits and realize that's a terrible idea? It's better if they're all different. But, you know, the inspiration was there. It wasn't a case of, like, the fundamental ideas are there. And I think it's so important to have that initial vision and to have that purpose. Like, I was speaking to Eric Sunden Anderson. I hope I'm getting their name correct. They made Whirling Witchcraft and other stuff also. But I was talking to them like just through Twitter and Board Game Geek, and like what they were saying is like initially they've got an emotional impact in their mind. It's like, and I think all games need to have a priority, whether it's, hey, I want to provoke this moment, or I want to provoke this experience, or I want to facilitate this thing. And I felt like what the promise here was of a long list of quests to be like, okay, start at number 1 and keep on going to like number 50. I think we had 50 in mind partially because of the crew, because you don't want to be less than the crew if you're to be compared to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although,
so with the next submission, I think I whipped through, I don't know, did I end up with 29? But that was just
I'm going to check.
Stretching and yeah, it was just doing as much as I could to be more concrete with it for you, and be more like what the ideal realized would look like. That this was more of an outline with some stats, and so I wanted to give you more of this is how I envision the idea coming to life. And then we worked and developed and play tested without the story elements for so long, but we came back to the story, which I'm just so happy that that we married all of this great hard work on the development of the design, so that was solid, and then getting to play in the story space again has just been a lot of fun.
I'm reading through our comments from your email from Wednesday, August the 3rd, 2022, where you make minor revisions. I give some quick thoughts, and then I give some longer thoughts, and then more longer thoughts. And you're very complimentary. We talk about a hand of 5, which obviously we've gone down to a hand of 3.
Yep.
I did send some audio. You said, I'm really happy to eliminate the ability to move a card or to test it only in a later mission. And I think that, we found that I don't miss it at all. I don't know how you feel.
I don't miss it at all either. There was definitely more tension. More tension in you're stuck with where it's put. Yeah. And that's part of the excitement of the game, or the finish of a quest when you do it, is there's more of that sense of accomplishment because you worked within those much stricter constraints.
And then I mentioned something about play until the deck runs out, or move cards at the end, because there wasn't a clear thing of what you do. And then I think I was pushing for play until the deck runs out, which you liked. And then you suggested we could also reduce the deck, which then led to us reducing specific letters, which was such an interesting design space.
Yeah.
Because if you say, okay, in this level, you don't have any N's or I's, then suddenly, okay, I can't use these things. And even removing just the S's, when you've got to make 5-letter words, that's a massive deal.
I think that was the most fun I had. That was a major change and such an exciting one when we went to removing cards. But I remember the most fun moment in playtesting was in 5-letter words and saying, okay, now take out the S. And the reaction, I felt so wicked because I giggled almost maniacally when they were groaning at me. Like I was just the meanest person. And I kept saying, I believe in you. I believe in you. You don't believe in yourselves. But boy, they were so upset to lose the S.
I think that's the best state. And much love, Elaine. Thank you for dropping by.
Thank you so much,
And
Elaine.
You have a lovely day as well.
And pet that cute peppers for me, please.
I want to look back at other things, because we were just spitballing and brainstorming at this point. You had come up with the original vision, and then I think this was almost still in the vision design, to steal that term from Magic. And I suggested a couple of rules. Each player claims exactly 10 cards, which we were both intrigued by, but it doesn't scale well across player
Yep.
counts.
Yep.
And I think everything we've done, there could be like bonus levels for special things we do if there's enough demand for like, okay, let's do 3 player specific things. But I think
there were some of those that worked really well for multiplayer, but didn't scale for the solo, and we wanted to steer clear of those. But they were valid. We could definitely bring some things back if we wanted to do special player count levels or anything like that. But yeah, it's funny to think about the things that we tried and
oh my gosh, this is an interesting one. That so one player claiming all cards of a specific suit. Yeah, that was, and yeah, I agree with your past self. It is probably very hard, but and it depends on the player counts and the details. The devil is in the details, as people say. And your additional thoughts that we never actually did, while the restrictions, which was player counts, we tried that. It worked well. We decided to make it 1 or 2 players. And we wanted to expand the number of possibilities, and then placement restriction could actually work. We could bring that back. Players can't play next to the card played immediately before them. What did you? I'd forgotten about this. How about you?
I had forgotten about that too. Yeah, I think that could definitely come back. I wonder if we might need a token that you'd move underneath it to indicate which one it was. Because sometimes when you're looking at both and then you're looking at mini decks, like you could forget which one was played last. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's intriguing. I could see that coming back. I could see another 50. Look, what are we going to do? Start our next 50 quests? Some of these are valid. They could totally come back. That's awesome.
I want to look at, let's call it version 0.2, because I mean, we just made version 1.0, so it doesn't work if we have too early numbers. But like, this is version 0.2 from late August 2022, and you've got the rules. And you start having the story in here, which is already lovely, and it really sets the thing. We did have variable cards for player count.
I'm glad we changed that. Yep.
Why did you have that originally?
I don't know if it felt like there needed to be fewer. Well, I think partly because 3 is the right one for all levels, but 3 was definitely better for tension for the solo as well. So before we had that for all levels and we were still talking about 5 cards, it seemed like we needed fewer for 1 and 2 players. But 3 has turned out to be perfect at all player counts. Well, if anything's perfect, but I think it's perfect for the game. It's that was the right call.
I know
sometimes there's a glut of choices and it's cognitive overload, and
you're just not sure. You just have to write something down, and it's your first. You just pick something, and it's better to get something on paper. I think that's the key point here. It's better to get something on paper so you can start talking about it. I really find this part interesting. I wonder, should I zoom in slightly? Is that slightly better? Yeah, I think that's more readable. Is that okay? So as far as I can see, this is basically identical to the current rules, except for a minor thing, which is if it does.
Talk about that word "must" claim.
They must claim the word if it meets the quest requirements, which 99.9% of the time you would want to do anyway. But I could see probably not in multiplayer, but especially in solo, you might just want. And also with some of the words, when you're needing a specific number of cards, it can be
that's when
really
we've
good.
done it. Yep. That was probably before we had some of those quests where, well, maybe there were a number of cards. Definitely is not a must anymore.
Yeah,
but it is close. It is close to the same core, though.
You can have tax even in quest number 6. Sorry, and then if you've got the perfect cards, you might just be like, "No, I'm not going to claim it," and then everyone's like, "What?" And then it could turn that into taxed or taxing or even taxi. I mean, that's fairly. And we changed the starting player rules. I mean, I like that anyone can start. It is very loosey-goosey, but I like the idea of, well, who would like to start? Do you want to start? And kind of having that thing.
It feels like when we were doing the harder ones that the decision felt like our agency mattered. like even if it didn't affect our outcome, it felt like it did. So it was a good feeling to decide amongst ourselves.
Especially in some of the slight spoilers, some of the later quests, like if you really need low numbers or you really need high numbers or you really need this or that, I might be thinking, well, I've got something and I can give you a really good clue because I've got a really weird hand. I can give you a clue to tell you what's in my hand. Or I really want to set the direction. And basically all of this is the same. We changed the 2 rows must be clear, which I think is a good change.
I do too.
And I really like this part still being in the rules, even though we did discuss it heavily afterwards. And I really like the fact that I think we should talk about our weekly meetings afterwards, because I just want to pay respect to Matteo and Matt Leacock, because it was Matteo Minipace, co-designer of Daybreak, who actually told me, when we were designing Daybreak, we had these weekly meetings. And that was what made me think, that's a really good idea. Maybe we should do that. And I think that even, like, we probably met up, I'm going to say, I don't know, 45 times a year, something like that. And I'm guessing we skipped around 7.
Yeah, but it was certainly the vast majority of weeks that
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying 45 as in, like, I'm saying that's a serious commitment. Yeah. Like, that's like skipping 1 every 2 months, basically. And we were meeting up, talking about the game.
Sometimes we were meeting and saying, didn't have time to work on anything this week. Real life happened. Yep. And we always gave each other grace.
We did. And I would say that there were probably, I don't know the actual numbers. Neither of us kept the records of this, because that wasn't the point of our meetings, to be like, we must meet. But I'm going to estimate vaguely that if we did meet 45 times a year, then probably 40 of those times we did actually talk about the game. Like 40 of those times, like maybe 3 or 4 of those times, we just didn't have anything to say. We were too fatigued, but so it was like, hey, we're all good. And we'd maybe mentioned the game for like 2 or 3 minutes, just saying, hey, I've not managed to test anything. Have you? Okay, well, this is still the next thing we should do. We both know. And let me actually put up a banner for weekly meetings since we're talking about it. But yeah, what do you think? Like, I don't know if you saw my thing in both building the game and also in the board game BezDay's Facebook group, where I basically asked for co-designers, and I said, I think that the reason I make games is for the joy of the activity, to make stuff that I'm proud of, and to make money. And I believe that my priorities are roughly in that order. So my first priority is to enjoy the process, to be aligned, to be able to discuss all our ideas. And I think that having weekly meetings, it both meant that we connected, not only as co-designers, but also now as friends, I believe. And I also believe that it sets us in a good situation where sometimes you don't think there's anything to talk about, but then things come up. And then you're like, hey, I've got this small issue. And then I really love discussing a small issue for an hour with someone else. And you are willing to go along with that. And we really got into the weeds. We really dissected, well, is it better for people to be able to claim 3 letters long things, even in the diabolical levels? And we decided, yes, it is, because you're still losing free turns that way and free cards. But we had a big discussion. We had so many big discussions about the communication. Was there anything in our weekly meetings that you were surprised by, or anything that you were like, oh, I didn't think we would spend so long talking about that?
I think the only thing that might have been a pleasant surprise is how easy it was for us to, whether we came in thinking 2 different things or not, or if we think we're thinking along the same lines, to still go through all sorts of possibilities and end up in a place we were both happy. So it just doesn't. The pleasant surprise, I think, is that there was never a conflict we couldn't. I don't know if there was ever a conflict. There was just different ideas. I don't know. Did we ever have? I don't remember ever being in a conflict. I mean, there's definitely sometimes where I went, well, I don't love that, but this could happen, or that could happen, or let's try it. Yeah, it was always.
And both of us were willing to try things. I think that's the key thing, because, I don't want to. I have started games with yourself, with Tiz, and I'm really proud of Seize the Power, but it's not been published yet, and I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't want to think about it right now, but I think part of it is that I started a whole bunch of games around the pandemic with people on my stream, and one with myself, Matthew Dunstan, and Alan Paul actually went a little bit further, and then we worked on it one more time in person. But then I think none of us were. It was like a fine game, and maybe something could have happened to it, but it didn't feel like. I don't think any of us were super excited by it at the time, given everything else going on. But it was the one co-design experience that I would say was a bad experience was when there was a rule that I felt wasn't given proper consideration. And that's basically what I think is the key. You don't need to agree with me, but you need to kind of consider it and really explain why, and we need to explain our case. Because if we agreed, then fine. It's worth discussing, it's worth challenging ourselves. If I'm working on something just myself, I'll always try to do a crazy rule change at some point during the design, just to, make sure that I'm not just doing things because they are the normal way, or my brain just falls into regular patterns. I need to, and depending on it's within a bind and yogi, originally all those cards were worth points, and then you had all these points, and then just going to you just have a bunch of cards, and every card is 1 point, and there was a massive change. And then moving to you know what, I don't like player elimination, but let's try it. I mean, that's a massive change, and it is such a better game. And then back then it was always give a card to someone, draw a card, give a card to someone, draw a card, and it worked. But then it was Forrest Bauer who said, "Oh, I played it with kids, and then what we did is we just drew a card, did what it said," and I was like, "Does that even work as a game?" And then I played it, and it was like, "Yeah, it does." And so, kind of trying those radical changes is worthwhile. But when it even with your solo design, but when it comes to a disagreement, I think the key is, I guess, communication, compassion, and consideration. Like, if you strongly disagree, explain why,
Right.
and listen to the other person, listen to why they're feeling that way. And if there's something that you've not tested, then try it. Be willing to test these things. And
I think that's what I mean by that lack of conflict, is that even if we had different ideas, I always feel like we were both listening to each other and open to each other and felt safe, explaining what we were thinking, even if it was searching for words and it wasn't concrete yet, and you were like, why don't I like that idea, or what's that bothering me about that, and you were sorting it out, or I was sorting it out just live. There was always patience and grace and caring about what the other, and respect for the other person's thoughts. So yeah. I think that's what I mean about no conflict. It's not that we never disagreed or had different thoughts, but I just never felt like that I had to bring boxing gloves into the ring. I just always had to talk to my friend Bez about what I was thinking. You know what I mean? And listen to my friend Bez's thoughts and I think we ended up better for it in all of those cases, just by considering what the other person's thoughts were. And
I think that's also giving ourselves time to, we would typically, I would say, an average meeting might be 2 hours, 90 minutes of talking about the game, 30 minutes of talking about personal stuff. That's how I feel like if that would be like the most typical meeting. I don't know if you disagree. I'm willing to be corrected on those ratios, numbers. But my point,
I don't know. Sometimes we were really short because we didn't, real life happened. So sometimes
sometimes we had short meetings, really long, sometimes.
So yeah.
But if it was
might average somewhere in that 90-minute zone. Yeah. And then sometimes we weren't talking about the game; we were just talking about life. So.
But the point is that talking about life is such an important part, because yes, we are working together, but design is such a how can I put it, a personal thing. Like, it matters so much who you are and where you're coming from, and having that respect for the other person, not only to say, I respect you as a designer who's made some good stuff and will continue to make good stuff, but I respect you as a person. I respect you that if you say something, it's for a reason. I respect you that if you don't get back to me for a while, it's for a good reason. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And knowing what was going on in each other's life, just so we were better able to accommodate that, so our expectations were roughly correct. We had vague deadlines, and honestly, the first real deadline was today, that we needed to have stuff ready for. It would have been nice to have more stuff ready for UK Games Expo, but hey ho. And we needed to test stuff so that Mew would be able to put it together. And I would like to show the final sheet, but shall we? I'm mindful that it is kind of getting late, but shall we keep working through version 0.2 and talk about the quests? Okay, so no passing is allowed, which I think we added the discard rules later on, I guess.
Yeah.
And 4 letters was good for a moderate difficulty, but I'm glad we added the easy levels, because I don't know if you noticed my slight disagreements to your post where I said, even if you're uncomfortable with English words, I think you would still enjoy the first few quests.
Oh, yeah. I just meant, my husband I'm so proud of this game, but my husband can't play it. It's really uncomfortable for him. And I'd spoken to Dan Hughes the other night, and I said, do you play word games? I don't think you and Cora have ever reviewed word games. And he said, no, I don't do word games either. I said, okay, you and my husband shouldn't play. So it was kind of in my mind because of
that makes sense. Okay, when you said uncomfortable, like, I guess there's a deeper thing at play there. And again, this is all about understanding people better. Because I thought you were meaning like maybe someone who's like, oh, my mind went to Mew, the graphic designer who's very uncomfortable with speaking English, but then whilst playing with Nine, they had a lovely game, and they actually, I think, managed to get to Quest 10. I can't remember.
But and I would agree with you that it was a vague statement on my part because I didn't want to necessarily call out people who have maybe learning disabilities that make them particularly stressed with words. And so it wasn't a very clear statement because I wasn't singling out any particular feelings or issues people might have. But I had those two people in my mind that I care about them both. So those were the folks in my mind.
I think the word uncomfortable I misinterpreted. I took uncomfortable to mean
it was pretty big.
I'm having some difficulty rather than this causes me stress. Let's look at this.
But you're right too. So if uncomfortable could easily go that direction, and so you're also right. Folks who might go, "Ooh, it says uncomfortable," but there are a lot of people who, when I've said for playtests, who've said, "Well, I'm not really a word game person, but I'm willing to give it a go," and they've really enjoyed it. It's been one of their favorite word games. They've said because of the cooperative nature, because the pressure is not on one person, and because you're all working together toward the same goal, and and there's more help. Like when people say a clue word, they can spell it.
Yeah.
And
I think that's really important that people are able to carry others a little bit. Like you have a limit on what you say, and I think my favorite way to play is definitely consult the council, because if you say, oh, you should play this blah 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 blah, and you're just looking at other people's cards. I mean, I remember in Hereford there was one person who was telling her husband a bit what to do, and he seemed to be okay with it. I assumed they've been married for a long time based on they might be newlyweds. I'm kind of just making a big assumption. Just because they were older, statistically, I thought, they've probably been married for a bit longer. And they know each other, but like if someone was doing that to me, like a friend, I would feel really put out. And so even if you are discussing stuff and you're saying, oh, remember I said this word, just having that private hand of cards so you can say, well, you don't know what else I had when you put down the thing. It gives you some shield and it gives you some ownership. This story is very similar to how the intro starts now. I mean, words have changed, but you've still got the same kind of tone. And this quest, I believe, is identical to Quest 11.
Yes, indeed.
We made.
Oh, did we add something to Quest 11 though?
Oh yes.
Now I think we did because of the story.
Oh my gosh! Of course we did. Sorry, let me.
It was exactly 11 for a really long time until we added story back into our world.
And then we realized that. Can you explain what story meant and why we decided to change Quest 11?
Yeah, so we were playtesting a lot simply mechanically, so without any story surrounding each quest. So we would just sit at our playtest and go, okay, minimum 4-letter words, make 4 of them, and that's your quest, right? And that's all we would do. So then we got to the point where we had 50 quests. We had tested well into the 30s, but we had 50 quests written, and it was time to start building that story around what we were really comfortable with, was well tested, and we were really happy with. So I started at the beginning with our easy level and got our introduction, and then started building our story. And this is one of those things where you were
And I want to
about,
interrupt there just to mention that the 4-letter words are, for most word game people, that's a really good starting point in theory. But
yes,
what I realized is that, I mean, especially when I played with Alan and Charlie Paul, oh my gosh, I need to credit them as well.
oh gosh, I keep remembering more people who helped.
And then Alan and Charlie Paul were saying, oh, this is something that we would play with. I'm not going to name their child's grandchildren. They don't want that level of information, but they are public figures in as much as they've done game design and art for games. So they are publicly known on the internet. But yeah, they were saying, oh, we would play this with Tiny Person X. And then, but maybe if it was, and then at that point I was thinking, well, would this be okay? How much help would they need to give? And maybe we could make an even easier thing of saying, well, you have to have 3 letters, and even with a 3-letter challenge, we should be able to make it still challenging somehow.
Yeah, so our easy levels were 3-letter words.
When I say challenging, what I really meant to say was interesting.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, and engaging, and something that people would want to play, right? So our easy levels were 3-letter words. Our moderate, what do we call them? Moderate. I'm like, what do we call it? Our moderate levels are 4-letter words. Tricky is 5, fiendish is 6, and then diabolical does all sorts of things. Are you ready for diabolical? You don't know what the next quest is going to be. Yeah, no, we're still working. Yeah, but
honestly, my favorite quests are like, it's interesting. Even though people say, "Oh, I really want to lose," I really enjoy the sorts of 15 to 30 series where I'm probably going to win, but I'm just enjoying a relaxing time with friends.
yeah. And I think that was part of our joy too, in just working with the mechanics, was finding ones that, well, where was I going with that? Just solely working with the mechanics, we could play around with that difficulty level and engagement level and say, okay, this is comfortable, this is and then we had different experiences, right? You could choose to have I want something that's really going to tax my brain, so you could pick that level if you want. You could pick a higher level, or you could start we kept saying most folks would start at 11, because that was where most people who are comfortable with word games would fit in nicely with the difficulty level. So then I started writing the story, and that was right before Protospiel Online event. And so I brought those first story levels to Protospiel Online and played with other designers.
What month was that?
That wasn't May, was it? Was that January or was it May?
I think it might have been April, because...
I thought it was a May one. It was the very first weekend of May this year.
Because you got it ready enough. Maybe Protospiel was at the same time as the Herefordshire board gamers thing going on. Because I playtested it as well that weekend.
Yeah.
And originally we had things saying, oh, if you want straight from quest number 1, if this was super easy, jump to quest number 11. And in quest number 11, it wasn't actually that exciting, because it was 4-letter words, make 4 words, and it didn't seem like, oh, it's kind of the same. And then they did that, and then they jumped to 21, and then I think they lost, and then they were like, oh, it was our hubris. But they did have fun with it, and then I explained what the other levels would have been, and they said, wow, that sounds much more interesting. We're sad that we missed that. Oh, we're sad that we missed that. We're sad that we missed that, because I'm going to I'm going to leave this one on number 11, but let me show this where it's quest number 1. Make 3 letters, 5 words long. That's the simplest thing. And then number 2, okay, you remove the I. That's not a big deal. But then now, no duplicate borders. That's something you need to think about. And then now you need to have blockers, which is actually really interesting. I love blockers because they add asymmetry to the 2 rows, because otherwise the only asymmetry is contextual from what you've done on previous turns by doing this. And I do like levels where it's like, oh, some words need to be either really high or really low, because then you can have both of them working on a line. And then like the evil lackeys, like that just changes things massively. And then with Fip and Piff, and then you're claiming a number of cards, you're removing letters, and you can skip a massive amount now still, but yeah, you can go.
Yeah, and my experience was with designers, seasoned game players, right? Designers, so they're really well experienced. They jump right into the rules. Were no sweat. I started them on level 1. When we had just been doing mechanics, we'd been starting higher levels. So I was like, I really need to test this story with you and see how it's playing. And so we did that with level 1, and I said, okay, we finished, success. Where would you want to go? Because we had, like you said, we had options where people could skip way, way far ahead. And they took a peek and said, well, I don't want to miss this stuff. So I want to keep going. And for me, that was a big light bulb moment in how much the story changed the experience. Like all of a sudden they're going, well, first of all, I'm missing story. Second of all, as I peek ahead, I'm seeing other levels. So I want to experience this more. Even with seasoned game players, experienced word gamers, starting it easy. So all of a sudden it was like, I don't think we should start people at 11 anymore. I think maybe now that we've got this story for people to learn, and then different sorts of elements of the L deck that they get to experience in some of those levels, like you mentioned, the borders, so different rules that we introduce, like the mini deck, which is, I love the mini decks. Those are a lot of fun to me. And so those sorts of things are nice. People don't want to miss that part. So it really changed how we structured it, how we suggested people skip, and how people felt when they played it. So yeah, that was really fun to get back to that. And then the other part I wanted to mention about the story element, when you had talked about us knowing each other as people, as well as co-designers, the way we decided to build the story and where we decided to take the story is such a reflection to me of us and who we are. You know, it's become something that it's
Shanti
yes,
Shanti. We need to credit Shanti.
Oh, Shanti was yeah, when he said, I feel like you're missing an opportunity to do something here that's meaningful. And that was so inspiring. And so, and that was another instance where we came together and talked, and it just was easy. We just
spent like 3 hours of just being like, oh, this could happen. This could happen. You brought up inspiration from different comics and films. And it's not high literature. There's not loads of people like the Great Gatsby that you need to remember the names of. You're not going to get confused. And when you skip stuff, it's designed that it'll be okay that you skipped it, if you know what I mean. You will still understand. But yeah, I think, yes, the story makes a big difference, and people do get a little bit into the role playing, because I remember Zach in there for Board Gamers saying, wait a minute, we've only done barely anything and already were junior librarians, which it makes a little bit more sense now, because you need to play more than just one level before you get to be a junior librarian. And then they're saying, oh, I don't know if we can trust her. She's just getting any person off the street. But yeah, this is the new level 11, and we changed it after that because we were thinking it's too much of a dip in. It's not about the difficulty as much as it is the interest of just removing O and T, yeah, and then immediately it's like, whoa, that's hard. No, oh, oh dear.
Are we missing
I
a
just
part of our rules? Well,
quest 12 word length. It's wrong.
oh, it is.
Do you have a bit of paper beside you? I will
I do.
type it somewhere. I will type it up in a little document when my text pad opens up again. But yeah, let's website. Oh, yes, this is the one that
Now we
was
need an
shown.
errata. Drat. Good catch there.
Yeah, there are going to be some typos and mistakes, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
we will have version 1.0. I wanted to ask you, should we make it doesn't really matter, but should we make it version 1.01 for the first fix, or should we make it version 1.001?
No, I think we could go 1.1. I don't think we're going to have 10 iterations between now and 2.0. Do you?
I think it should definitely be less than 1.1 because I
Okay.
think so. Let's go 1.01 because my thought is that version 2 to my mind is going to be such a big change with new illustrations and new typography. I want it to feel like, oh wow, this is really different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we hopefully won't need too much at once. Like we'll get a list of small errata and then ask you to make changes like in a week. I don't think it makes sense to send them all on a daily basis.
Yeah. That was quest 12.
12 word length should be for. Oh my gosh. Quest 2 was using the bottom letters, which we've done quite a lot of, and I love, that kind of bits of story that continues. And then, 3 words of at least 4 letters each. No matching borders may be placed next to each other, which we changed just to say that you can't have any matching borders at all. I think
again, those tighter restrictions are more interesting and create better tension.
It comes up more often, I think, is the key point. Like, I think if you have a rule, and that is one slight issue with the 3-letter words, but once you're up to 4-letter, I mean, you do definitely have to think about it. You can't just willy-nilly make words and expect it to fall into no matching borders at all. But yeah, with 6 different borders, it almost seems like you could forget about it. Do you have anything else to say? I mean, feel free to interrupt me. I know I hope you know that I am always okay with being interrupted. Some people want to be like talking all the way through. Some people just want to fill up space until they get interrupted, and it's like, great, now you're talking. Oh yeah, this is a really weird one. Each librarian gets an extra card, and then you choose one card from your hand, puts it in front of you. You are the only player who can claim words using this border as the final card. So again, this is really interesting, but it was because of the multiplayer, like low single player. It just made it so different, and we wanted a similar experience regardless of player counts. I love this. Remove the 6 cards with E on the top row. Such a good idea, and we played into it so much more. And I think the thing I love about removing cards is that you need to remember the card to win, but you don't need to remember in order to play. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like with the borders, for example, you need to remember that every time you're placing one card, oh yeah, I need, otherwise I messed up. And you can technically clear that and waste the things, but it's kind of annoying. But like with removing stuff, I will say, what was the word that we did on stream? Jubilant or something like that.
Oh,
Where
jovial.
jovial, where I forgot like we didn't have an A or something. I think there was like no arts or something at that point.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I made a similar mistake at least one other time when I was playing. I'd at least once on my own and at least once with I. And but like we managed to fix it fairly easily because that was still in the moderate difficulties. But you, it's, yeah, I find it hard to explain why I love this inherent restriction that yes, you need to think about it to win, but you don't need to think about it to play. Do you get what I mean? Like, and do you have anything to add about that?
No, I think I understand what you mean, and I love it that when we take more letters out, it becomes that timer. It restricts the timer more on the game. So it was a fun design space to play in. Absolutely.
Yeah, talking about cutting down the deck, I agree 100% because it's such a nice way to say, oh, actually, you don't get 48 cards. You don't get so many turns. You only have remove 3 letters and you've only got 30 cards. That's like hardly anything at some points. And there's at least 2 levels, admittedly in Diabolical, where you basically need to play perfectly. You need to use every blooming card. Quest 6 is 5-letter words. Then it goes back down to 4-letter words for Jack Q Vexes.
This is where I created his name, was here. And I just decided, because you and I think I guessed about this in our communication, that you gave me permission to play. You just gave me permission to just throw everything at the wall. It was a spaghetti. Just throw the whole pot of spaghetti and see what sticks. And so I went in going, I'm going to have some fun and I'm just going to play. And I had so much fun with the mini deck and Jack Q Vexes being our nemesis. And just, that's so freeing as a creative to be told, just go ahead and play. You have permission, and you weren't going to judge me harshly for, any of these things that we have taken out since. I mean, we've taken out plenty of them since, but it was a space where I felt like you were encouraging me to create, and that,
I mean, yeah,
not all of it would stick, but it was great to have that grace and room to play.
I'm kind of wondering how tired you are because I want to make another tangents.
Go ahead.
Exploration, vision, and play design. I want to preface this by saying that I'm not a fan of the business model of collectible cards games, trading cards games, or even for the most part, living cards games. I think that even though living cards games by their nature, or expandable cards games, which is the non-copyrighted term for living cards games, because technically only Fantasy Flights can use that, whilst expandable cards games are generally, the principle is you know what you're buying, but it can be like multiple sets a year, and you need to end up spending still hundreds of pounds a year just to have access to all the pieces. And I know things have changed, but I'm still going to come out and criticize Netrunner when it was being owned by Fantasy Flight by having 3 of each of the commons and 1 of the rares. So if you want a full play set, then you need to buy 3 copies of the box and give away a bunch of your cards, and then someone else is like, oh, but I would like one of that. Okay, now I need to buy. And it's like, why can't you just give them 3 of everything? It's like such a money-grabbing holdover from the idea of rarity in those trading card games. And I do think that Magic the Gathering has done some really questionable stuff in terms of their secret lairs, the number of expansions that they're coming out with, and the MTG 30 thing, which was 1,000, well, technically $999 for 60 cards. That's like, I understand that people know exactly what they're buying, but I'm bothered a lot less by the One Ring than I am by that, because the One Ring, at least, A, there's a flavorful reason for that, and B, and more importantly, if you just want the quality of that One Ring to play with it, there are other versions. Like the 1 out of 1 just has alternate art. That's the only reason it went for millions of dollars, or whatever it went for. It was definitely a 7-digit number. And but like, I'm a strong proponent of, if a game, I just want a deck construction game where people are able to access the pieces to play and not have to spend hundreds or even thousands of pounds every year. And I don't see any game doing that currently. And that makes me sad, because I love the idea of deck construction games, but the only way to avoid that is basically to set special rules within your playgroup to say, okay, we're only using cards from this one set, and then you can't then play it with other people. Anyway, so having berated Magic the Gathering for a few minutes, do you want to say anything in response to that, or to defend them, or?
No, I think it's a fair cop.
Fair. Okay. I do want to admit that they've done a lot of good for design principles and kind of sharing information. And one thing that they did recently is divorce design. It used to be just design and then development. The developer originally, like, it would just be, okay, Richard Garfield literally single-handedly makes the set, and then their friends are playtesting it. That was the first set. Then Arabian Nights, Richard Garfield literally made it in less than a month, which, kudos to them. They're not the best balancer, but, they had a freaking month to do it. And then later on, they got more people from the Pro Tour who were professional players to do that final development. Now, what they've got now, instead of having these people make the cards, these people develop the cards and tweak the numbers and stuff, now they've got exploration, vision, play, and set design. I skipped out set design because that's more applicable to that, but I think we could draw an analogy from it still. So the idea of exploration is like, okay, we're making a set about gods, it's going to be Roman inspired. Let's think about Greek gods and Roman gods, and let's think about how those gods could be part of our game, and let's think about how this could work mechanically. And then the idea of exploration is basically just to let people do a bunch of research and to be like, hey, here's some cool ideas that we could do. And then vision design is basic, and that part of it, like the spitballing, is so important, to be like, hey, we could do this or do that or do something totally different, but here's the starting point. And that's the most important thing. And then in vision design, all they need to do is to get a bunch of cards made. I say all they need to do, but the cards don't need to be balanced. They don't need to be the exact same mechanisms that finish up in the final thing. It's like, hey, here's some things. We think these things are fun. And hopefully they are. And by the end of vision design, it's like, hey, here's some things that we really think are fun that you can play with. And then play design tries to balance it and make all the kind of colors work well together, and tries to make it so that there's a bunch of viable strategies. And now we are moving into more of what we might consider board game development. And then for them, set design is like, at the end, like number tweaking. And it doesn't really matter how exactly define these things. I think it matters more that you give space to yourself or the other person to do this brainstorming, to do this spitballing, to say, you know what, we don't need to make any of these levels any good. Just chuck in as many ideas as you have. And there's so many levels here where it's like just wow, this is so cool. And part of me is sad that quest number 9, no librarian may ever claim 2 more words than another librarian. So you need to kind of stay in balance. And for solo, consider each role a librarian. I mean, we could have done something with just roles for every player count, and we didn't really explore that. And we probably, I don't think we should, like, at this point, but maybe like in a few months we might come back to it. I don't know, and explore, okay, is there space for this in version 2.0? I don't know. But yeah, sorry, I've talked a lot. What do you think about exploring, about like splitting up the times of brainstorming? I know there's if you say you can never go backwards, that's itself a problem, but you know, giving a dedicated, okay, we've got this long to brainstorm, is that a helpful thing?
I thought it was tremendous here. Like I said, the freedom to just play in the space and go, well, it doesn't matter if the ideas succeed or fail right now. It's just throw ideas out there. Just keep being creative. And that absolutely, I felt that was tremendously valuable. And some of these things ended up in the game, and some of them didn't, but are still here. Like like you just mentioned, maybe we could kind of explore some of these again.
What do you think of the bit I've just highlighted?
Yeah, I thought
each role can never have 2 more words claimed than the other role.
Yeah, I think that those were interesting possibilities. Definitely. I mean, that's why I wrote them back then. But yeah. And yeah, we didn't even think about the fact that instead of just eliminating it, we could just change the solo rule to be applicable to all player counts. We didn't even try that. But we sure could.
This one, every librarian must claim exactly 10 cards. That's basically now, as a group, you must claim exactly 17.
Yep.
And that feels so much more interesting.
I agree. That morphed into something better, for sure.
Yeah, this one's very nice. Each card's unique border. We definitely use that. And plurals are not allowed.
We just effectively did that with taking the S out, right?
Yeah, just remove the S.
We just removed the S, which has wonderful effect on people.
We're still doing all of this, the bottom letters, and I know I'm skimming over a lot of the story. It's a fun little thing that you've got. That dastardly Jack Q vexes is at it again, and he's getting trickier. And it's exactly the same, but it's 6 words, each containing one of those. So yeah, definitely the new story, when I compared this to like what you've got now, I mean, there's a question of what's the optimal number of words, and I'm not sure. I don't think it should be any longer than what it is, and I can see an argument to say that some people would prefer it a little bit shorter, or it should be a little bit shorter, which, but like, compared to this, I'm so happy with how you brought so much more of that story. Are you happy with your story? Do you think that between now and version 2.0?
Yeah, go ahead. Between now and version 2.0.
Between now and version 2.0, do you think you would consider shortening them? Do you think you would consider rewriting parts? How
Absolutely.
are you?
This was very much a first draft. So it's not, it hasn't been refined. It hasn't been edited to the perfect lengths or anything. Mostly what I was trying to do was give us the story that we wanted to tell as our framework, and then incorporate some fun elements in the story that connected to the level, to the quest. And so I had a lot of fun playing with those, and I would take out plenty of that stuff if we need to, for it to be more friendly to read and play. But because so much of what the heart of it that we ended up putting into it was important to us, as it got later, the later ones definitely have a little more language to them. There's a little bit more going on, so that we can wrap up the story and kind of give a little special message. And so I wanted, as much as I didn't want to go on and on and on, but I wanted to give us enough that we can cut and still keep the heart of our story together.
I'm going to say that I wrote 4% of it.
Wonderful.
I think that's a fair assessment, given that there's 50 quests, and that would be 2% per quest, but there are intros, and I did the epilogue and I did some minor rewriting for little bits, but I would say 96% of it was written by you and 4% was me.
And that's the writing, but the deciding how we wanted to take the story was 50-50. We just like everything else we did, we talked about it, we made notes about it together. We kind of agreed on what we thought could be special. So
yeah, we agreed on what the overall message of the story is. And can I just say the theme of the story, or
I guess
like it's basically all about the power of words, and it's all about kind of connecting, like that's what it is to my mind. And it's all about like the wonder of libraries just being open to people, and like about freedom and about empowerment. And it's a little sub-theme of misjudgments, if you know what I mean. Is that a word, misjudgments?
Yeah.
I would want to check that in the dictionary before using it in a word game, but everyone knows misjudging things. Everyone knows what I mean. And it's a game about kinship, and I think there is something beautiful. Like I was talking about connection as being my word for 2024, because not just within board games as a designer or whatever, I feel like I want to connect with people. And when I play a game solo, the reason it's about connection with the self, connection with other people, whether it's the humans who have written things or other humans you can discuss media with, or people who you're watching or playing something with at the same time or chatting to or whatever. And it's also connection with the world around you. And I think you can definitely have a connection through watching something. And then the thing I always try to do on my streams is if you write anything, as long as it's respectful, I will respond to it. If you start, I have had bigots, on my show, of course I have. And, I block them or I just ignore them until I can block them. But like most people are lovely. And if they say something, it's be like, yeah, of course we can go on a small tangent for that and like reply to it very quickly. Or I might say, hey, I'm trying to be really bloomin' focused today. But the game, to me, espouses the connections that words can help create. And I am happy with how it came together. And for anyone who does play it, I'm sure everything I say stands for Kirsten, but please do correct me. I would love to know what you think of the length of the text. Would you like to have even more text? Would you like to have less text? Would you like to have a lot less text? And, that's the kind of thing that we kind of, if you are in the market for this kind of game, we want to make it the best game it can be for you, because we want to connect with you. Maybe I'm over-egging the whole connection thing, but I don't think I am.
I don't think so either. I mean, it's a cooperative game, and it's set in a library, and it's got a lot to do with knowledge and words and communicating with each other and sharing with each other and being a community, and being a community that's there for each other. So that was what we decided to do, and I'm really pleased with how it went. But I do understand it was a first draft. I am not.
It's later than a first draft. It's the first public outing.
True, but it's definitely not final. Let's say that. It's definitely not final. It is. I am very, I am definitely expecting it to be edited before 2.0. For sure.
So we have this again, just going through 6-letter words. I think that raising the length is such an obvious but such a good way to do it. And I'm glad we also made it more consistent. So it was like, okay, 10 quests of 3 letters, 10 quests of 4, then 5, then 6, then 10 quests of whatever the heck we want. Double letter.
Yeah, I think that structure really works well.
Double letters are definitely interesting.
And we have them still.
We do. I don't think they're interesting enough to. I mean, there's always the question of, should we have used this in more levels? Or this other thing, should we use it? I don't think there's anything that I'm thinking, should we have used it in fewer levels? But it's always like, we've only got 50 levels, and even though that's a lot, they all seem so varied and so lovely. And this one where you must claim a word using the card in front of you after you've picked it, doing 7, 6, 5, 4 in that order. I think it's interesting that we've gone ascending. So rather than having the big climax and then going down, it's like, okay, I can easily do 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 7, that's hard. And then I think with our current one, there are 8 letter words in there. But I'm
tickled by my description here on my words on Quest 20. You can see how I like to tie descriptions to the to the actual.
There's an eclectic electric enchanter extracting everyday essentials. Everyone's energy is needed to expel the evil.
And then you remove all the E's because they've all been used in the description. But that's what I mean about having fun. I was just having fun, and I think that was a great place to restart, I guess, because I mean I started with the outline, but this was where it was born. I think was after talking together and doing this is where we knew what it could be, what the potential was.
I mean, like, now we're kind of avoiding using the letter, which is kind of clever, but it's not as instantly, I see what you're doing. It doesn't hit people over the head, and I do wonder whether we need to be more blunt, because there's so much clever stuff that you've got going on that you had to explain to me, saying, did you notice that I didn't use any of those words? Or did you notice that I only used single vowel things? And no, I hadn't quite often until you pointed it out. 4 of the bottom letters, that's... it didn't quite, different borders, again, extra cards. Like, there's so many ideas here. 7 letter words, and then Sorry, I'm just laughing at that. Locking yourselves away, yeah, after locking yourselves in the research room. So, and then kind of combining lots of things. Like, there are a lot of ideas here, and I think that's the key thing. And so many more came about later. I don't want to just list off everything that came up, but I think people who've watched will have a good idea of what came up and what remained. I think the only thing that I'd like to say before we say stop talking about Questabell for now is the columns, because I think that came out of a conversation of, oh, should we have to clear everything? Maybe not. But then what if there was a level where you had to clear everything? How would that work? Well, I guess you can't just have 2 rows. That doesn't make much sense. What if you have multiple rows just for this one level, one quest, I mean, and then you see the setup, you instantly know what you've got to do, and I'm really proud of how I think the best quests are those that are intuitive. They feel natural. They don't. I mean, sure, the mini decks, you need to explain them, but like the intuition or the complexity or weirdness should be kind of compensated for by how awesome and how interesting it is. And I think mini decks do that. But like, I want it to be as intuitive as possible. I want it to be as interesting and varied as possible without like overwhelming the players. And yeah, I think that's the key parts. Do you think there's anything else in your mind that makes you think this is a good quest?
I think all the ones that make you think a little bit differently than the one before. So like we talked about the timer element where you've got so much out and now we have less cards to work with. How much wiggle room do we have? How much discarding can we do? Or then ones that all of a sudden you have the whole deck back. But now it's, when do you discard? How often do we want to discard? Because we do want to search for the right things. I love that different thought process. And then the one type of quest we haven't mentioned yet that is one of my favorites, if not my favorite, is the only removing the middle or removing certain cards and then
leave
pushing
behind
things together. The whole leave behind. It makes you think differently as you're building the word. And you look, that was one instance where we went longer. I know we went longer than we could have claimed because it was like, I don't want to put those cards together. I want to go a little bit longer and put other cards together. And plus it's a claim a certain number of words level or number of cards level. So you get more cards if you make the word longer. Plus, you know, do you want to put those 2 ones together, you know, your OV and your NZ? Do you want to do that? Or so, yeah, I just, the fact that makes you think differently in a different way, the puzzle is a little different, is so fun to me to like you mentioned, the columns, it's a different puzzle. It's a different way of thinking about it, building 5 words at a time instead of 2. The mini decks are so fun because now, wait, I don't have to play from my hand or discard. I can play right from that mini deck. Is this the right time to play from that mini deck? Should I play a card first and let somebody else play from the mini deck? It's just a neat sort of variability. It was fun to design in, and it kind of tying back to that question earlier about watching other people play. I still have fun playing myself. So, yeah, when I get to join in and play with the play testers, if I want to try a different player count and I want to be in on it, or you know, the player count, and I need to be in on it to have that player count. I'm just still finding it really delightful. And our streaming that we did together, I had a great time.
I mean, there is genuinely a question of are some of those diabolical levels just too hard? There is an unanswered question there.
Yeah,
And
I
I
have
think
notes on
that
one of them that I also haven't succeeded at yet, but we
um,
still have time to play with those.
like that might be something that we tweak for version 1.1 rather than 1.01. Like 1.1 will be a big change, not just
Yeah,
like fixing a typo. That's
right,
what
right.
it is in my head. But like
Gotcha.
it's like there's genuinely a question of how hard things should be,
Hmm.
because there is a joy in pushing your mind in different ways. You mentioned Leave Behind, and when it comes up, the game is already quite difficult. And there are some levels that are even more difficult beyond that, where we have to basically look at this sheet of paper and be thinking, okay, which cards are left, which numbers are left, okay, is there a card with a 4 on it that will help us finish this word? Um, when you need specific numbers or when you've got very exacting restrictions like that, there is a lot of, how can I put this, research and thought that needs to go into almost every move. And
Yeah.
then until like someone says, oh, that's a good word. And then they say the words and then was like, oh, that's such a good idea. And then you're sorted for a few turns until you reach the next roadblock and like, okay, how can we do this next one? But like, I think their variation is an interesting thing to talk about because there's definitely different styles of variation. I think that if the game wasn't about, it is partially about getting to know the deck. Um, in order to finish, I would say some of the late 30s for sure. You need to know the deck really well. You need to be, I mean, you might be lucky, but I think you need to be thinking deeply. You need to be aware of how the numbers and everything works. You need to understand that the distribution of that is different to the borders. But conversely, if it was just that, oh, there's an even split and there's these two symbols, hypothetically, let's imagine a totally hypothetical deck. It's got these 6 borders and there's 8 of each. And then there's these other 6 symbols and there's 8 of each of those. Then going from one to the other, it would be mechanically a change, but it wouldn't lead to much change at all. And even within our game, I think that the only reason I like them both being in the game is because of that. Okay, there's so many 5s and the uneven split. Like that uneven distribution gives it a slightly different flavor, if you know what I mean. And
Hmm.
so, to my mind, what I'm trying to express is the difference between just nominal surface level variation, like the difference between Inner Bind and Yogi is far less than the difference between Yogi that's currently available and Yogi Second Edition, which has now been shown on Board Game Geek, so I guess I can talk about it. Um, like the second edition, the art is kind of more similar to the first edition Yogi, and you've still got like the card holders, which do make a difference, but it's the instructions and the things that not just the, and some of the cards are technically different. I would say there's about um oh, I did a number somewhere. I think there was like of 60 cards, about 20 are exactly the same as the original. About 15 are things that could have fitted into the original. And there, in the original, there was no this card on forehead. But having that card on the game doesn't change it dramatically. Whereas this card's always moving. And then you've got to start doing this for the entire game or like waving it. And that changes the experience massively. Not to mention the 21 like cards about memory, about motion and speaking. And similarly, to bring it back to Questabell, yes, you can have variations in like, yes, something different being removed will be technically different, but it won't be as big, and having to chase after 17 plus cards is technically different to having I think it's like 5 words before that. But like the reason that 17 plus cards is even in the game is because then you can say exactly 17. And I think that's the thing that makes it really different. That's the thing that makes it, okay, now I need to think differently. I need to actually work out the maths. I need to be mindful of all these things. And yeah, there's some, I feel like every rule change, every variation comes with cognitive baggage. But the ideal for game design, I would say not just within Questabell quest design, but with game design in general, is to have that cognitive baggage be as low as possible, whilst having the variation be as high as possible. Because games, I mean, yeah, sure, you want a similarity of experience. You wouldn't want Questabell to suddenly be talking about dexterity. That would be not in keeping with the spirit of the game. You want it all to be within that. But like within that, I think games are brilliant partially because they are different from each other. And these 50 quests, it is kind of like making a series of 50 games, you could argue.
Yeah, I definitely felt like it was that kind of fun and challenge was virtually doing 50 little mini games. Yeah.
And like you want them to have variation from each other. Similarly, if you make a game, you want it to be different from other games. But yeah, I feel like it's, oh my gosh, it's almost midnight over there. Let me just check.
Am I clearly drooping?
We talked a wee bit about game design and validation. I feel like we've touched upon inspiration and joy and the stuff we got asked about. But yeah, we chatted about a whole bunch of stuff. We talked about how we felt about it all. We talked about recent delights. We've talked about dancing. We talked about how we are. We talked about what Questabell even is. And the ELL deck, I made a side note about the contest. Basically, I will catch up. We talked about our weekly meetings and what the story means to us. We talked about the connections and validation with players and people, and remembering that we are not our own creations, which is such a important thing, but also that even as some people are inevitably going to hate our games, some people are inevitably going to hate us. And as Taylor Swift might say, haters gonna hate. So shake it off.
Yep. That sounds like the right answer to me.
So that was my recap. Is there anything else you would like to say, or say or whatever before we chat again in a bit less than 12 hours? Now it will be 10 hours.
No, I think we've had a great time reminiscing about where we started, where we began, and where we are now. And just so grateful to have had the time together and worked together and done the exploration and the vision and the playing, all of it. And to have all that out in the world right now. Now we're just waiting for folks to tell us what they think and that they're playing. So I'm eager to have some of that validation coming back.
And I think that tonight UK time, 10:30 UK time, I will start streaming at 9:30. We kind of said because that's when I claimed I would start streaming, so I'll try to stick to that. And or maybe it feels like if we're talking about Questabell, it would be a shame to start without you. Maybe I could do a different stream and then at 9:30 and then start a new stream with you. Like there's other things I can talk about, like business and stuff, and I was considering doing, yeah, I might do that. Like 9:30, I might do like a personal thing and then have like a 5-10 minute break in the middle before 10:30. And then when we meet up, I was thinking we could talk about the illustrations, how we feel about like skim through a bit of the levels, like talk more about what comes next for it, and then just wrap up with more talk about what games mean to us.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try and be as close to. Do you want me to shoot for 9:30 instead of 9?
9:30 your time, you mean?
Yeah, I mean I can shoot for 9 my time. Sorry, yeah. You. I translated your 9:30 to 8:30 in my head. So, because I have to do that all the time, being on the other side of the world from most folks. So yeah, just I can do either basically is what I think I'm trying to say. Is I can do I can shoot for 9 or 9:30 my time, which would be 10 or 10:30 your time.
We agreed that half an hour makes a big difference, and I think 10:30 is fine. I don't need to get up super early. Okay. So, to everyone out there, Kirsten can be reached on all sorts of places. I'm just going to share 2 links, if that's okay. One to Questabell Google Drive. Sorry. So if you're watching, let me. On YouTube, you will find it in the thingy. On YouTube, you'll find it in the comments, but that is the Google Drive link anyway. And if you want to know more about what's going on, and please also feel free to make art requests, then that's the mail out thing that I made. And let me do you have anything left to say?
No, just thank you for another lovely evening talking about our project together.
Bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye. This is the end of the show. Bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, everyone.